This is Hear Me Out. I'm Celeste Headlee. Who runs the world? And it's not just girls. Is it pop stars, actually? If you've been on social media or watching any cable news, you have probably seen a lot of people explaining brat summer, and that Vice President Kamala Harris is having one of those. You've probably also seen some really intense speculation about whether Beyoncé allowing the Harris campaign to use her song Freedom is an endorsement or is it not, about if and when Taylor Swift will speak up and endorse Kamala Harris. People are always going to talk about celebrities and pop culture moments and memes. It's kind of the point of the whole thing. But does the future of our democracy maybe rest in the well-manicured hands of pop stars?
They are not just a celebrity. They're not just a big celebrity supporter of a politician. They are a movement, a brand, an identity that actually impacts a large group of people.
H. Alan Scott joins Hear Me Out once again in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to Hear Me Out. I'm Celeste Headlee.
The brat green, what does it represent? I think there's this kind of idea of like making something like quite disgusting and turning it into this thing that, you know, people are going to look at quite a lot and think about and ask, you know, why is it so crap? Like, I really enjoyed that some people like absolutely hated it, and some people were writing these kind of like essays on, you know, why it was good, and obviously that was, you know, the point of the whole thing.
That was pop singer and DJ Charli XCX describing the cover of her new album, Brat. That's before it became political iconography, though. That's happened in the last week or so, because when Kamala Harris became the presumptive Democratic nominee for president, her campaign's social presence immediately leaned into the pop culture aesthetic and the moment that is Brat. It's a very memey start to an already unconventional campaign, but it also has the blessing of Charli XCX herself, who a few days ago tweeted to her 3.6 million followers, "Kamala is brat." Look, there's no argument that the stakes of this election are very serious. So how is it that everyone, even the candidates themselves, seem to care so much about what frickin' pop stars think? For more on that, we turn to our guest, the returning H. Alan Scott, comedian, writer, host of a multitude of podcasts. Good to have you back.
Am I brat? I'm brat. Am I brat?
I think you're brat.
I'm brat. I think I'm totally brat, right? Yeah, I'm brat.
I think you're brat.
Yeah, and so is Kamala, apparently.
So, okay, can you first explain, before we get to your possibly controversial opinion, what does it mean to be brat?
Oh, see, now I had to turn to Charli XCX to really to fully understand, you know, their sort of intent behind the definition of brat. But for me, brat is, I mean, I really do feel like I am brat. It's someone who is complicated, who just like, you know, they know that they're messy. I know that I'm messy. I know that I fall down a lot. I put my foot in my mouth a lot. I know I'm that person. But you know what? I'm also fierce. And I'm also like amazing. And I'm also like actually cool and fun to be around. I feel that inside of me. I do feel that. And yes, some might call that arrogance. I call it confidence. And that, to me, is brat.
Oddly enough, you began by saying it's complicated, and yet the cover of her album is just a very bright lime green and like just the word in all lowercase brat written in Arial font.
I mean, but Celeste, you know, like, you know, the complication lives in the nuance. Sometimes you don't need messy for things to be complicated. You know what I mean? Taylor Swift has made a career on things seemingly looking perfect when we all know it's complicated.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get into your complicated, but possibly unpopular opinion here.
Okay.
What is it that you think?
I mean, I actually agree. I think Kamala is brat in the sense that, listen, she's cool. I'm sorry. She is cool. Like, there's no way that a person of her stature and her intellect has risen to the place that she has risen in her career. I'm speaking specifically about her career. And to be sort of like the badass, like, yeah, now I'm the nominee. Who's the brat now? You know what I mean? Like that energy is just cool. That said, Kamala Harris fundamentally is also not cool in that she is the funt. Like
she was a freaking top cop of California.
It has never been cool to be a top cop necessarily. Let me just put that out on the record as well. But like, she's not cool in the sense that like Maya Rudolph really got into the essence of who Kamala is, I think, on SNL, and that like, yes, she's accomplished. Yes, she was the top cop. Yes, she's badass in a lot of ways. But she's also the fun aunt who wears the jeans that are a little too high and probably talks to you about a pop star from like 5 years ago.
Ah, that's a good one, Liz.
Sounds like you're in a good mood tonight, Senator Harris.
Oh, I am. The font is back, baby. America's fun aunt. I'm also America's cool aunt. You know what? Let's not do that. Tonight, I'm not going to worry about the polling numbers. I'm just going to have fun and see if I can get some viral moments. Mama needs a GIF.
We know that. We know that about her. And that's partly why I think she's cool, too.
Okay, but here's the thing. You're not coming to us saying, my unpopular opinion is that Kamala is brat. You're coming to us saying that pop stars are controlling politics, or at least influencing it as much as in the past, like public intellectuals would have.
I would agree with that. However, I would also say that politicians are recognizing the value of being sort of like, you know, in the know while realizing that we all know that they're not in the know. We all realize that Kamala is not sitting up in wherever the vice president lives. Where do they live? I don't know, probably the Lincoln Memorial or something. But wherever the vice president lives, she's not listening to Charlie XCX. She's just not. We know that. However, she is, for her own advantage, embracing the social capital that pretending to know what and who Charlie XCX is benefits her in a way that is very beneficial. And in and of itself is also very brat because it's messy.
Don't you think Ella Emhoff, her stepdaughter, is listening to Charlie XCX?
Oh, sure. Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
And Cole, probably. I mean,
I don't know. Sometimes I feel like those Brooklyn kids feel like they're really too cool for school. So they probably think they're too cool for Charlie XCX. Listen, I'm a West Coast kid. I lived in New York for a long time, but I jumped ship to the West Coast, and I've abandoned that, like, it's okay to like things that are necessarily not cool with the rest of the Brooklynites. And so maybe they're not listening to Charlie XCX.
Yeah, I'm from LA originally. But anyhow, let me get back to the original opinion that pop stars not only have this huge influence.
They do.
But are recognized by politicians as having a huge influence. So, I mean, I guess in favor of that opinion, supporting your opinion, is Taylor Swift, right? Yeah. Because people have said that Taylor Swift could decide this election. On the other hand, that's not pop stars. That's pop star. Like, that could be unique to Taylor. Yes. Like, I'm not sure I buy that as much as I love Dave Grohl, his fans are going to vote for who he thinks they should vote for.
Wow. Dave Grohl went in a heterosexual direction. I did not expect this conversation to go down. And
are we hating on heteros? Because
no, not hating on heteros. We're hating on Dave Grohl. We're hating on Dave Grohl. That's and the hetero energy that Dave Grohl gives to the world. That said, I think you're correct. I do think that there are some pop stars. And also, I would argue, Charlie XCX is not offering the same pop value to Kamala as Taylor and Beyonce does, in that, you're right, Taylor is in another realm. She's almost an Oprah in a sense that, like, her influence is so massive and so wide that people are organizing around her to then do things for her, basically. And Charlie XCX is not really doing that. The biggest thing she's influencing are homosexuals wearing certain shirts to gay bars. So, like, let's be real. Like, she's not, like, having the impact that Taylor is on economies in, like, Western Europe and shit. Can I curse? I forget. Can I curse?
You can.
Okay.
Yes,
good.
You can curse.
And so I think it's different, but we also know that these politicians recognize, especially in how close every election has been for the last however many years, that getting a couple thousand votes because of some teenagers, some 18 and 19-year-olds love Charlie XCX actually might help Kamala in Michigan or Wisconsin or wherever it may be.
Okay, but, you know, we had this poll that came from Suffolk University and USA Today, saying that nearly 90% of people said that Taylor Swift's endorsement of a candidate wouldn't matter to them, or it might even make them less likely to support that candidate. Yeah. And for Beyonce, it was 91%. For Kim Kardashian, it was just like abysmal.
I would argue to that, and I'm taking a very Whoopi Goldberg The View direction with this part, my response to that. But I would argue that the Gen Zers that I know, the moment they get a notification for a poll or a phone call, even worse for a poll, they're not taking that poll. So the people I want to know the ages of the people who are in that poll, because I have a feeling if they are 30 plus, it might not be the most accurate representation of the demographic in which these politicians are going for.
So do you think this is different from past eras?
I do. I do. I mean, I think...
in what way? Because, look, Maura, in her prep for me, provided one article from the CBC in Canada that was called 100 Years of Celebrity Endorsements.
Yeah.
And we're talking about going back to Al Jolson endorsing Warren Harding. Mm-hmm. So is what we're seeing really different?
I don't think it's necessarily different. I think the impact that some pop stars have and some celebrities have on elections is different because the nature of celebrity is different. It's like celebrity is not just people who are in movies and in music anymore. It's a lifestyle at this point. Kim Kardashian is a lifestyle. Oprah is a lifestyle brand. She's not necessarily a celebrity in the way that Al Jolson even was. And so it's that their influence is greater in that we do look to these people for the products in which we use, the stuff that we use of them. Like they're in our lives in a very intimate way. And that has a lot of influence, I think, over at least subconscious, maybe even influence over how people make decisions.
See, if you're going to get into the subconscious, there's no way for me to argue because how would we know?
Yeah, we don't. No, we don't know. But that's what I'm saying is that, what influence, when I was last night, I was at Nordstrom, right? And I was looking through some Skims because I'm looking for some pajamas out there. And I love Skims, like the feel of the pajamas. And I didn't actually buy anything. But then when I came home, I went on Skims' website. And then that led me to, some other beauty website. And there's a domino effect. There's a subconscious domino effect that the influence that some of these lifestyle celebrities, and I would argue Beyonce and Taylor Swift are also in that realm of lifestyle celebrities, that because they're in our lives in such a ubiquitous way, we don't know the impact they have over our decision making because in a weird way, it's like they're marketed to us for us to toy with our heads to do what they want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I'm having a hard time imagining that people are swayed. I guess where maybe I'm coming, I meet you in the middle, is I do think when celebrities and pop stars put in the work, that they can really make a difference. I'm thinking of Oprah and
Barack
helping
Obama.
to get people registered to vote, the Get Out the Vote effort. And I really think a big influential person, or, Frank Sinatra worked for JFK, but he really worked for him.
Yeah, he created the song for his campaign.
That's exactly right. Yeah. High Hopes. Yeah. So I think that when pop stars put in the hours, put in the effort, not just an endorsement, but that to me is okay, but that's true of every high profile person.
Yeah.
Right? Is Taylor Swift more persuasive than Elon Musk?
I think in a different way, but yes. I do think that the influence that Taylor Swift has over young women in particular, but also a demographic that, frankly, Kamala is going to need to get, which is white women, white suburban women. If they can at least be influenced in the smallest of ways by Taylor Swift saying she's with Kamala, then who knows? Maybe she'll be able to cipher off a couple of moms who have these tween daughters who are obsessed with Taylor Swift, and that's all she ever hears is Taylor Swift. And when she goes to the polls, somehow in her thinking, Taylor Swift is subconsciously a part of it. But I do think that it is a matter of numbers and small numbers in sort of getting some of these elections and them winning some of these states. And I think they think every friggin' little bit helps because they're all learning from Hillary Clinton, who took for granted some of those smaller states where every vote should have counted.
To be fair, she won the popular vote by 3 million votes.
But that's not how someone wins a presidential election. And that's what I'm saying is you cannot take for granted the smaller flyover states, if you will, that some of those votes could sway an election one way or the other, just like it swayed in 2016.
Okay, this conversation will continue in a moment because I'm definitely not convinced here yet, H. Allen. I'm talking to H. Allen Scott about whether or not pop stars in particular and celebrities more generally have a big influence on politics and voter turnout too. And we'll continue this in just a moment. This is Hear Me Out. And we're back. I'm Celeste Headley, talking today to H. Allen Scott, who says pop stars control our politics. Not completely. I know. I know. That's just our headline. Pop stars have an outsized impact, shall we say, on people's political decisions. But, also we see how entrenched H. Allen people are. That people, even though people thought Biden was too old for the job, those who were going to not vote for Trump or who were going to vote for a Democrat were going to vote for him anyway. And they will still vote now that it's Kamala. That people who are going to vote for Trump, it doesn't matter if he chose J.D. Vance or not. They were going to vote for him anyway. In fact, there's some evidence showing that our political identities are more entrenched and we are more likely to make negative assumptions about people based on their political party than their race.
Yeah. That's shocking.
So, yeah. Right?
Yeah.
That would mean that we're more partisan than we are racist, and we're pretty damn racist.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
So,
I think a lot of it is the optics of, like, for example, with the whole Charlie XCX thing, as soon as all that happened, and as soon as everything happened with Kamala, on my feed, because, I am a gay homosexual, I started to see homosexuals.
Not gay homosexual?
I'm both. I need both. That's how gay I am. I need all of the adjectives to describe my homosexuality. But that said, I saw a lot of homosexuals on the social media wearing, of course, the shirt, and they started to gather. Now, those people are likely going to vote for Kamala regardless. Like, they just are. But there is a social impact to that image going viral over social media in that it shows that Kamala is, quote unquote, cooler. She's the cooler candidate. And you look at like an election like, for example, you brought up JFK before. You look at that election. That was an incredibly close election between Nixon and JFK. Incredibly close. And yet...
Yeah, but Nixon was sweating like a pig on national TV.
Because he didn't look cool. There was a cool, young, vibrant factor, hopeful, something looked towards the future with JFK that Nixon could not offer, even though they were even close in age. And so there is this sort of like, I think there's a social capital to looking like the friggin' cool kid in class. And Kamala has a little bit of that edge, even though she is fundamentally not cool, in my opinion.
Kamala?
Yeah, I don't think she's like, I think she's cool in the sense that she's a badass, she's smart, she's very qualified. But
did you see the thing of her doing her step with her sorority?
Yeah, that wasn't cool. That actually was not very cool. It was cool, but it was like, girl, let these girls do their choreographed dance. Like, no, I'm sorry. Like, that's like, it was like watching all of like the people who never heard a Kid Rock song dance to Kid Rock at the RNC convention. Like, it just was like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't want Kamala to be dancing around doing her thing, talking about coconuts, because I want her to be the smart person that she is, the prosecutor that she is. I celebrate her for her out of touch intellect. I celebrate her for her brain, which is just like how we wanted, like we were having Hillary Clinton say, Pokemon, go to the polls. I don't want Hillary Clinton saying, Pokemon, go to the polls. I want her to be talking about like some foreign country and its GDP and how it's going to impact the US and blah, 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 smart things. And that's what Kamala needs to be doing too. So that's what I mean when I say she's fundamentally not cool, but yet she's badass. Does that make sense?
It does, but also, look, I'm going to be the realist here, which I'm sure is not the first time someone has said that to you. But women don't get to do that.
Oh, no, I get it.
Women don't get to be just smarts and policies. Mm-hmm. Research continually shows that a female candidate has to be likable to get elected, whereas men don't.
I get that. I fully get that. But I would counter that I fully agree with that. But I would also counter that in that for a lot of politicians, with the exception of Donald Trump, because he is a making of his own that is in a lane of his own. But you look at someone like a Biden, but I don't need Biden walking around those aviators or whatever it is. Like, someone told him that was a good look years ago, and his like PR team was like, yeah, let's go with it. Or his like all the crazy things that ice cream. He's eaten so much friggin' ice cream. We don't care about the friggin' ice cream, Biden. Like, and they lean into, and so there is a thing where they're forcing us to sort of think of this person as likable, as, you know, fun. He wears the aviators, he has the fancy car, the big muscle cars that he likes, or the ice cream. And it's just like, we know you're boring. We know you're boring. Be boring. It's okay to be boring if you're smart. But I get what you're saying, that not a lot of people are able to sort of just accept that, oh, this person is just very smart and boring, and we should just let them do their job and us worry about other things, you know?
I mean, I feel like we've gotten onto a different topic, which is very, very interesting, but also not on the topic of how much power pop singers have. Although I will say that
I think that's a big part of it, though.
I think, well, here's the thing. It's that Democrats have always had the cool celebrities.
Yeah. Oh,
always.
yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And Republicans, and I say this with love, kind of, I'm not a Democrat. I am an independent, but Republicans have, you know,
the VH1 reality TV stars.
Yeah, it's not even the second tier. Like, you know, it's that's the celebrities they have. I mean, you mentioned Kid Rock.
Hulk Hogan taking off his shirt at the convention. Like, I mean,
and recreating a scene from the movie Idiocracy. Like, Democrats have always had the cool celebrities, and has it helped them? Like, strategically, Republicans have outmaneuvered and out-strategized Democrats almost every time. Republicans literally represent and fight for things that the majority of Americans don't like or agree with. That's literally,
I would argue,
and yet they keep winning.
I would argue that, yes, Democrats definitely have celebrities, but the impact that a Barbara Streisand has, let's say, for example, who's always been
George Clooney, I
think, is another great example. I don't think anyone cares about what they have to say. Beyonce and Taylor Swift, I think, is a different level of celebrity. And again, I think it goes to the lifestyle type of celebrity, in that they are not just a celebrity. They're not just a big celebrity supporter of a politician. They are a movement, a brand, an identity that actually impacts a large group of people.
So maybe that's the difference that you're talking about here, and maybe that's what you're sensing is the branding thing.
Yes.
Because definitely different from when Frank Sinatra was, look, I had grandparents and their friends who put on a fedora and tried to pretend like they were a member of Frank Sinatra's crew. But I feel like there is a difference in the way people interact with celebrity now.
I would say Frank Sinatra actually played a very similar role to JFK that Taylor Swift and Beyonce plays in this election.
Really?
In that, if you think about the timeline of Frank Sinatra's career, not to get all Hollywood history on you, but there was a time in which Frank Sinatra was not the sort of like crooner, beloved crooner that he was. And at that time in Frank Sinatra's career, he was actually kind of freshly off being sort of like the young to middle-aged, sometimes difficult, a bit of an ornery sort of like Hollywood personality. He had just won an Academy Award a couple years before that for playing sort of just like a know-it-all type guy. He had a reputation for being very difficult. And so it wasn't like he was this old school crooner at that moment. He very much was the coolest kid in the room. And so if he screamed youth, if he screamed, and he wasn't young, but he was still screaming, he connected to that sort of vibe. If he screamed that of cool, young, effervescent, it's the same kind of thing that I think Taylor Swift and Beyonce give Kamala, especially with Kamala using Beyonce's song, like in the commercial. They just Freedom. Yeah, they just released the commercial for it. And having that, it's like, it's such a powerful combination of forces that allows Beyonce's sort of movement-driven celebrity to be able to be attached to someone like Kamala. And I think JFK did the same thing with Frank Sinatra in that way, but in a different way.
Except Beyonce also came out and even gave speeches at campaign events for Hillary Clinton. She sang Formation.
Yeah.
And made it a feminist thing.
Yeah.
And Hillary Clinton very accurately, but also clearly said that the election was about abortion, was about the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
And that did not move. I mean, the majority of white women voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So that would argue that Beyonce is not that big of an influence.
Well, I mean, you did say yourself that she did win the popular vote. So Hillary Clinton definitely had an influence on votes. She just didn't have the good state game that she took advantage of, or she took for granted some of the states. That said, yeah, I mean, but you also have to remember, too, 2016 was a very different time for abortion rights for women in this country and for women's health care in this country than 2024 is. And we are living, and we know that Democrats have found success in running on abortion now. So, I have a feeling that message would play very differently in those votes, those white women who did not vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016, understanding that their rights, their health care rights potentially might be still at risk for years and years to come. Perhaps they're going to vote a little different in 2024. And that's been proven with some of these recent elections.
Okay, we have to take another quick break, but we will be back to continue this conversation about pop stars and politics. I'm Celeste Headley speaking with H. Alan Scott, and this is Hear Me Out. Good to have you back. This is Hear Me Out, a podcast from Slate, and I'm Celeste Headley. Today, our guest H. Alan Scott says pop stars will have a big impact on voter behavior come November. And so, we only have a few minutes left to talk about this here, H. Allen. And I have to wonder, is it really the pop stars, or are we just in a changed landscape? And by that, I mean, I think a lot of voters are very excited about the fact that there's a 59-year-old, which in presidential races is young, Black and Asian American woman running for office. I mean, I got to say, as a journalist who's been covering politics for well over 25 years, I was surprised that the DNC didn't try to go around Kamala and just went ahead and immediately made her the top of the ticket. Now, the presumptive nominee, I should say. And the reason why I ask is are we just in a changed landscape is because young people are so excited by this, but that they have gone and made all these TikTok videos. Kamala has kind of a distinctive laugh. They're threading her speeches into pop songs from Mitski and Taylor Swift, etc. They're making all these memes. Mm-hmm. She said that thing about her mom asking if she fell out of a coconut tree. And so now people are using the palm tree emoji and the coconut emoji to symbolize Kamala Harris. Maybe this is just all part of the way that people are more interactive with politics. Well,
and excited, too. I mean, I can't deny that Democrats, especially under Biden, but for the past however many years have been, especially Bernie Democrats have been in a moment of give us something new. You know what I mean? It's like that Bonnie Raitt song, something to talk about. We haven't, I feel like a lot of Democrats have not had much to talk about since Obama. And so they're definitely eager to, and I think there's a lot of nostalgia among Democrats for the Obama days, and Kamala is an Obama Democrat on every single level. And so that alone is exciting for a very large base, I think, a Democratic base. But I also think, too, I don't think it's necessarily Kamala's impact, and I don't think they're doing that necessarily because of her. I think it's similar to Obama in that, we were just very eager in those moments in history now and back when Obama sort of came onto the scene. I think we as a people were just very eager for something new. We've had all of the Bushes. We've had all of the Clintons. And in a weird way, Trump is kind of roped in with that, too, because Trump has always been a part of our social conversation in some way. And it's like when someone fresh and exciting and smart and new comes along and actually shows that they have a chance at doing the thing, that's exciting. No matter what political party you're a part of, it's exciting to watch. I mean, Republicans would never actually admit it, but the rise of Barack Obama in a short 4-year span was very exciting. And I think every single American watching that can be like, oh, wow, that's kind of the American dream in a way, for a smart politician, for a smart young person to reach that level of success and to do it in such like a grand way. And I think we're kind of eager for the same thing right now. And pop stars give us that hope too. They offer the soundtrack to that hope and excitement.
But how do you tell the difference between the influence of that and the influence of the pop stars on their own?
Well, I don't think, see, that's the thing. I don't think you can necessarily measure the influence that a pop star has on a particular election or a candidate. I think it is kind of immeasurable in that, it is, like we said, like it's the subconscious of the voter. You don't know the influence that Oprah has on their voting and how they vote. I mean, I do what Oprah tells me to do. So like, yes, I'm influenced by a pop sort of culture person, but you can't measure that in a poll, and the people who are likely most influenced by pop stars are the very people who aren't answering their phones, the Gen Zers, who we desperately need voting because only the older people vote at this point. And so like it's reaching a demographic that not only is very difficult to poll, but very difficult to measure the impact that whatever's having on them. So I think Democrats are recognizing that. I think the Harris campaign has recognized that there is a benefit to leaning into this Charlie XCX moment, this pumpkin spice latte Taylor Swift moment, this very powerful, the powerful women moment with Beyonce. Like there's social capital and potentially some votes into leaning into that, not knowing how it will turn out.
So our esteemed producer Maura is tagging for me.
Queen Maura
Yes,
is her name.
Yes, absolutely. Is tagging for me a report from NPR saying that an Instagram post from Taylor Swift helped lead to a massive increase in voter registration.
Yes.
Now, we don't know who those voters will vote for, but we can make a good guess based on Taylor Swift's politics and the fact that a lot of people on the right have really tried to turn Taylor Swift into a villain.
And they haven't been able to.
Yeah, that's hard to do.
Yeah.
35,000 new registrations on National Voter Registration Day, which is the most since 2020. And the number of 18-year-olds particularly was massive.
Yeah. So
Maura's point, I think, is that this is immeasurable, that we can see a jump in voter registrations. And I guess, the number crunchers are able to connect that to Taylor Swift's post. And that kind of is, to me, a question. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, I feel like when any celebrity, pop star or not, who is popular, takes action and tells people, do this specific thing, they often are capable of doing that. When Oprah told people to get registered to vote, they did it.
Yeah.
But we have no way of knowing if they actually voted, A.
No. Yeah.
And we have no idea of knowing who they voted for.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, the demographic that I think Taylor Swift might sway would be white women. And white women were kind of a deciding vote for Donald Trump in 2016.
Well, yes, but I would argue white middle-aged women, and it's a very different demographic with Taylor Swift than just white middle-aged women.
Oh, I thought you were including their moms.
I am including their moms, but you can't not include the youth vote either. It's there, and so I do feel like, and that's something that I think a lot of Republicans take for granted. I think a lot of Democrats also take it for granted, that young people are mobilized at this point. They're very angry about, obviously, what's going on with Israel and Gaza. They're very angry about the Supreme Court's decision on abortion. They're very angry about a lot of these things, and their future, young people's future, people who Well, I would say close to my age, because I'm only 26. But like, you know what I'm saying? That they're very concerned about their future. I'm looking at sort of people fresh out of college, 20, 21, 22, 23, and their future has a vastly different sort of outlook than what my future even did when I graduated from college. And they are going to vote. I wish they would vote in every single local election, but they aren't. But they will vote in a presidential election. And I think that is when those white women votes that Taylor Swift might be able to sway in a capacity, or the white women who want to be as cool as Beyonce and they're going to do what Beyonce says. I think that potentially will have an impact.
They won't be as cool as Beyonce.
No one is ever as cool as Beyonce.
Well, I don't know if I'm convinced about pop stars, but I will say, H. Allen, one thing we can agree on is everyone should vote. Right?
Yes. Oh my God. Everyone should. It is so much fun to vote. You get a sticker, and if you do it in person, you get to go and you get to see people dressed in really weird outfits. And then when people walk and they're like, "Oh, you should vote for this person," like outside because they have to stand really far from the voting booth, you can act like you're a celebrity and be like, "I don't have time. I'm busy. I don't have time." When you're not busy at all, we all know you're just going home afterwards.
I work the polls every year, and I also want to put in a plug for volunteering to work. Actually, you get paid a little bit to work at the election polls. It is fun to be a cog in the wheel of democracy.
And it's fun to see you do that. I won't do that, but it's fun to see others do that. It is.
Yeah. In any case, it is always a pleasure and a delight to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now listen, this episode is about influence on politics. H. Allen is clearly going to be voting for Kamala. This is not about whether you should vote for Kamala or not. It's about whether you think pop stars will influence your vote. So please let us know what you think. Do you think Taylor Swift will have an impact on the election? Let us know. The email address is hearmeout@slate.com. Now, last week we had Kristen Meinzer back on the show, and she argued for the end of the BFF. A listener named Eleanor reached out after that show and shared her thoughts. She wrote, "I was listening to You Don't Need a BFF today, and something you said jumped out at me. You mentioned the statistical figure known as Dunbar's number and stated it claims that humans can only sustain 5 close relationships at a time. That's off by 145. The figure Robert Dunbar stated as the upper limit for stable social relationships is 150 people. This gets to the heart of my own problem with the concept of having a best friend. It's too limiting and not fluid enough. It has at its core the idea that we can't rely on a large number of people for necessary emotional care and support, which is something very significant to me as a disabled person who can't always have the same people on hand to help. Ideally, we should treat each person we engage with in each moment as deserving of love and attention. Isn't that what Hear Me Out is about?" It is, Eleanor. I absolutely love that. I will correct one thing. Only because I'm a journalist and I ruin everything. Robin Dunbar, the British anthropologist, actually described our social connections as concentric circles. So he said there's about 1,500 people you could recognize. He said over the course of our lifetime, we'd have 150 meaningful contacts, meaningful connections, about 50 friends, 15 good friends, and only 5 intimate relationships, like your closest friends, which would be, I guess we'd think of as our BFFs, right? He was talking about the closest relationships he had and basically said, if you suddenly meet the person you're going to fall in love with and marry, that knocks one other person out of that 5. That's essentially what he meant. But everything else about what you said, Eleanor, is top notch, and I completely agree with it, and it warms my heart. Thank you for writing. If you have an opinion about something you've heard, let us know. It's hearmeout@slate.com. Hear Me Out is a podcast from Slate. The show is produced by Maura Currie. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations. And Alicia Montgomery is the VP of Slate Audio. I'm your host, Celeste Headley. Until next time, please speak your mind, but keep it open.